On Monday this week, Riot Games announced an 11% cut to its workforce in layoffs which have affected its departments across the board. It's been a shock to many. So who exactly has it affected, and what does this all mean for the future of Riot Games? If you've been paying any attention to Riot Games in recent years, you'll probably have noticed their footprint in the gaming and media space has seemingly grown exponentially. For their 10th anniversary in 2019, they announced a slew of new projects aimed at expanding the League of Legends universe. These range from the fighting game Project L to the announcement of their one-day record-breaking animated show Arcane, as well as their publishing label Riot Forge. And that announcement came right in between the releases of Teamfight Tactics and Legends of Runeterra in 2020, with a little-known game called Valorant following shortly after. In the words of one wide-eyed fan's comment that I saw at the time, it felt like Riot had declared war on video games. For many years, Riot Games was memed on by fans and critics alike for having a plural name despite only ever having released one game in League of Legends. But in that 2019 to 2020 period, they shattered that joke forever. In the space of a year, they planted their flag firmly in what felt like half of the gaming industry while announcing plans to take over the rest of it. And that's not to mention their wildly successful ventures outside of gaming. KDA, the virtual pop group based on League characters, topped Billboard's World Digital Song Sales chart in 2018 with their debut single. In November 2021, Arcane was the most watched show on Netflix during the week of its release. It was showered with awards and adored by fans and critics alike. So, you'd be forgiven for thinking the only way for Riot from here was up. In fact, a little over a year ago, Riot announced their biggest budget of all time, showing no signs of losing the momentum they'd picked up in recent years. So that's why this week's layoffs from Riot was a shock to pretty much everyone. In an update for players titled Changes at Riot and the Road Ahead, founder Mark Merrill and CEO Dylan Jaja said the company was refocusing on what they call high-impact projects to move them towards a sustainable future. They outlined how, in recent years, Riot has more than doubled its headcount as it sought to take on more projects, but now have to make adjustments to focus on areas they believe have the greatest impact for fans while reducing investment on those that don't. Specifically, they said they'd be eliminating around 530 roles globally, roughly 11% of all Riot employees, with projects outside of their core offerings of League of Legends, Valorant, TFT, and Wild Rift being affected the most. Specifically, they addressed two areas of their business which have been affected most by these layoffs: Legends of Runeterra and Riot Forge. Legends of Runeterra is Riot's free-to-play digital card game, which has sought to combine an immensely popular game genre with the expansive League of Legends universe. In Riot's announcement, they said that despite its passionate community, Legends of Runeterra had faced financial challenges since launch. They said they plan to shift the game towards Path of Champions, the PvE game mode for the game. The other heavily affected area is Riot Forge. Officially launched in 2019, Riot Forge has acted as the company's publishing wing for working with external and often much smaller game studios. Games like Ruin King, Convergence, and Song of Nunu were made in partnership with these studios as a way for them to explore corners of the League of Legends universe through new and diverse game genres. Riot said the upcoming release of Bandle Tale, a League of Legends story, would be Forge's final release. They said Riot Forge was an experiment to see what would happen when Rioters partnered with their favorite indie devs, but that now it's time to refocus on what they call ambitious internal projects. Another statement, this time solely from CEO Dylan to Riot employees, helps shed a bit more light on what exactly got the company to this place. He said the company had too many things underway, that some investments weren't paying off the way they expected, that their costs had grown to the point where they left themselves no room for experimentation or failure. He said that over the past several months, they tried to combat this with measures such as hiring slowdowns or freezes, but that ultimately the leadership at Riot felt they needed to center their efforts on projects that provided value. He emphasized that these layoffs were not to appease shareholders or hit an earnings number, but that it was what they needed to do to maintain a long-term focus on players. He then laid out the severance package, which includes 6 months of salary and their 2023 performance bonus in cash, as well as continued health benefits equal to the length of severance, equity retention, and a company laptop for job searching. When the news of the layoffs was made public on Tuesday evening, there was a steady stream of rioters on Twitter announcing that they were among those affected. Some, like Angie, relocated to LA and now find themselves facing serious visa issues as a result of the layoffs. There didn't seem to be too much rhyme or reason when it came to seniority. Some people had been with Riot for less than a year, but others, like principal narrative writer Graham McNeil, had been at Riot for 7.5 years. In that time, he's written some of the most loved lore and stories in the League of Legends universe, as well as an entire storyline for Arcane in the form of Progress Day. Scrolling down the list of rioters affected by all of this, you can see there's a disproportionate amount of writers, artists, and creatives. And these kind of people are, of course, the backbone for something as successful as Arcane. If Riot didn't find and keep creatives like this, something like Arcane simply wouldn't exist. The sentiment from the wider community has been a mix of sadness, anger, and ultimately confusion as to how this could even happen. There's been questions about why these people's livelihoods have been affected because of, in their own words, bets by the higher-ups. People are wondering how a record-high budget can be followed by layoffs just over a year later. Now, while I've not seen anyone trying to defend Riot on any of these accounts, some people feel there have been some saving graces. There's been praise for their severance package, that it's a solid one which stands above similar examples. And there's also been sympathy for their halting of Riot Forge, because as exciting as the concept was, it does seem like as a publisher it struggled to make these cool games financially viable with such small player bases, despite copious amounts of advertising for them on Riot's part. So what does this mean for the average player? Well, if you're watching this, there's a good chance you're either a League player, a Valorant player who enjoys the game and the esports side of things as well. In Riot's announcement this week, they made it clear that League of Legends, Valorant, TFT, and Wild Rift will demand their full focus. And while there have been some cuts to certain aspects of the esports side of things, it does still feel that Riot really values this as essential marketing for their core games. It's a model that worked very well for them with League of Legends. It's one that they've applied successfully to other games since. But somewhere along the line, it feels like Riot bit off more than it can chew. So the question is this it for now? Well, as far as we can tell, it's business as usual for Project L and the much anticipated MMO we've heard about for years at this point. So perhaps the most important question is, will Riot be able to stabilize from all of this? And will these layoffs turn out to be the correct move in the long run?